writer, actually participated in Speak Together. So he's a great hero of ours. And I have to say, I think that the kids who had him were incredibly lucky, because James Hannaham is one of the most successful, decorated, lauded writers of our generation. And I'm going to read it off because I want to get it right, because it is pretty astounding. So he wrote the novels God Says No, and that was a Stonewall Book Award finalist. And then Delicious Foods won the Penn Faulkner Award, the Hurston Wright Legacy Award, and was a finalist for both the LA Times Book Prize and the Dayton Library Book Prize. And it was a New York Times notable book for 2021. I mean, woof! His new books are Pilot and Imposter and Didn't Nobody Give a Shit What Happened to Carlotta. I hope that was American enough when I said that. But this is James in his own words. I do a lot of reading for research directed at whatever projects I'm working on, from pamphlets to novel series, but everything I read during that time can start to have some kind of influence on the work. Advertisements, street signs, travel guides, Facebook posts, XXX movie marquees, memes. I have a total magpie attitude towards art. Ladies and gentlemen, James Hannaham.
I don't think I said advertisements. I have a lot of stuff in my pockets that I wanted to not have in my pockets, but it's valuable enough that I was like, I don't also want to leave it in the green room, so I'm just going to put it, including this glass of rosé. Thank you, House of Speakeasy, for inviting me here to do a stand-up routine, even though I'm a writer. Don't let me forget this, okay? But between the lines, right? That's the, you know what? I'm taller than this. Damn it. Between the lines, okay, I'm gonna tell a story that I only pieced together. It took me about 50 years to piece this together. Partially because it was, I only got bits and pieces of it first. But essentially, it's how I caused my parents' divorce. It's a little dramatic to say caused, because it's really more like I was the catalyst. And I didn't really know anything about what was happening because it was very early in my life, which kind of almost didn't happen, but I'll get to that. So, when my father met my mother, he was seeing someone who he continued to see during their marriage and afterward. I'm still not sure exactly at what point she figured out that this was what was going on. But, you know, my father was a man who really didn't do anything he didn't want to do, which, you know, most of us refer to as a narcissist. But at the time, I didn't have the language for that. So this had been going, my parents had been married, I guess, 11 years. And this was throughout the 60s. So now you know how old I am, roughly. And they'd had 2 other children before me, my brother and sister. And my mother was kind of a sharp person, and I always was like, how could she have missed this? But I suppose it was a little like waking up and discovering, oh, all of those things, you know, those red flags were all true. So anyway, it was not far from here, in the Bronx, at Albert Einstein Medical Center. Woo! Albert Einstein! Woo! I was a very difficult birth. Um, my shoulders, as you can tell, would not fit through the birth canal. They still won't. So don't try it, okay? And I had to be born by cesarean. I was, I want to see the medical, because at some point I'm going to go and try and find my mother's medical records, because this was kind of an epic thing. And my mother would tell this story to me in ways that were, sort of mystic and obfuscatory and a little strange. And they may have affected me in ways that I'm not quite even sure are just, they might be just like subliminal. Anyway, okay, so I had to be born by cesarean. I was ripped untimely. They, at a certain point, the scar developed an infection. This is such a happy story, isn't it? I thought this would be funny. The scar developed an infection. There were points at which I could have died. There were points at which my mother could have died. I suppose other people could have died and probably did at the same time, but not totally unrelated people. And my mother was in the hospital. I found out like little bits and pieces. Well, I'll tell this part first. My mother would tell this story to me as a kind of odd myth. She would emphasize things like the fact that, or the thing that she told me anyway, was during this whole ordeal, she had a vision of Christ. And Jesus came to her and said, "Live with your hands open." She would tell me this story a lot, like through my childhood. And then she would also tell me about how, the nurses, like apparently when I was born, I had a lot of like hair down the back of my neck or something. I mean, it's really odd to hear all this without having been there or without knowing that, this was something, without being able to fact check, I guess is really the issue. And she made this, she always tried to make it sound as if, I was this, special weird being that had come and, enchanted everybody in the hospital, and, these great things had happened, like Jesus came and he was like, "Live with your hands open." And anyway, what I didn't know until not that long ago, my brother told me, because is that I started to think about this after I got married in 2015, and I sort of started to know a little bit more sort of intimately what the parameters of a marriage ought to be. And, this is the part where maybe I should probably tell this part too. Okay, yeah, I'm right, I'm almost done. I can tell, almost look at these numbers going by. So my mother was in the hospital for about a month with all of this. My father had warehoused my brother and sister off in Long Island with his sister, my aunt. And he had taken the opportunity to spend the time with his girlfriend. He never visited my mother. So, with all these facts in mind, it occurred to me at a certain point that if that had happened, if that was the kind of thing that happened in my own marriage, it would be a deal breaker for sure. And to her credit, my mother hung on for another 18 months, but eventually she kicked my dad out of the house. And I have to say, if I had to do it all over again, I would do it exactly the same way. I've never met two people who seemed like they never needed to be together ever in life after that. So, and I feel like it was to my benefit ultimately that my father was not in the house when I was growing up. And I told this story to my students, a few of my students, as we were doing a little thing about origin stories, and I had them go around and tell stories about, their horrible things that happened to them. And and I told this story. No, because I feel like I really need to know when my students like are traumatized, and they need things that I can't actually know to give them other than that if I don't know them. Anyway, so we went around the room. I told this story, and then like the class ended, and I went outside, and they were all kind of standing together. And one of them came up to me and they said, "You know, you really shouldn't blame yourself for that." And I said, "What are you talking about? I'm taking credit." Thank you very much.